Hey guys, it's Rinsler and welcome back to Ace Attorney. In the last episode, we managed to prove the evidence room murder was a fake, and it was Officer Marshall disguised as Detective Goodman in the footage. But we don't know why yet, so without further ado, let's just jump straight back in and hear why from the man himself. Enjoy. Marshall's confession. I had to do it that day. I couldn't just stand by and let it die. I stole the detective's ID and dressed like him. I planned to take out the evidence. I wasn't expecting Officer Meekins. I knocked him out and managed to escape. I knew which areas wouldn't be caught on the camera. There wasn't any murder in the evidence room at 5:15. So the supposed victim was really you? But there's one thing I still don't understand. Traces of a large quantity of blood were found on the floor of the evidence room. If no one was murdered, then how could that be? Officer Meekins managed to cut his own hand. My guess is he's the donor. It was way too much blood for such a small donation. Had to do it that day, I couldn't just let him press everything. When you say it, you mean... Do you even have to ask, partner? The SL9 incident. 2 years have passed since that case was closed. It was going to completely end with a transferal that day. Not if I have anything to do with it. That incident's not over. But what did he hope to accomplish by sneaking into the evidence room? When a case is closed, only that case's lead detective can look through the evidence. I wanted to have a look at that myself one more time. No matter what the cost. I don't care what anyone says, partner. That case is mine. But Officer Marshall wasn't in charge of that investigation. Why does he care so much about it? That day was my last chance. That's why I stole the detective's ID and dressed like him. I planned to take out the evidence. Why did you just disguise yourself as Detective Goodman? If I didn't make it look like Goodman was carrying out the evidence transferal, I'd be arrested for stealing evidence which wouldn't get me anywhere. So you did it to fool the security camera? And the detective's ID card? I stole that the morning of the incident. So that really was why Goodman started filling out that lost item report. I returned his ID card. I left it on the floor in the prosecutor's office parking lot. The ID card I found was left there by Officer Marshall. So essentially, you managed to succeed despite your lack of foresight. What do you mean, partner? I mean, the fingerprint activated lock, of course. No matter how well you disguise yourself, you can't change your fingerprints. Under normal circumstances, you wouldn't have been able to open that locker yourself. But it could because a rubber glove just happened to get stuck in the door. That means Detective Goodman must have opened the locker before Officer Marshall. I wasn't expecting Officer Meekins. I knocked him out. You pulled a knife on Officer Meekins and tried to drive him off? Let's just say I was a little surprised. I only planned on being in the evidence room for no more than 5 minutes. I didn't think anyone would actually come in during that short time. Officer Meekins certainly is a 1 in a million type of person, mistaking a detective for an intruder and demanding to be shown his ID. I'll have to think a little more about his raise this year. When did Edgeworth get so much influence? Anyway, he threw himself at me and I ended up cutting him slightly. I'm sorry it had to turn out that way. With me knocking him out and everything. By the way, what happened to your knife? Oh, you mean this one? I don't know what to say. So you knocked out Officer Meakin's hand? And managed to escape. I knew which areas wouldn't be caught on the camera. So you did your research beforehand. Those who go into the desert unprepared don't live long, partner. I didn't think it would make a difference though. Security tape is erased every 6 hours. If all had gone as planned, no footage would have been left. However, you bloodied your coat in your struggle with Officer Meekins. If someone was in the security room and I came out, the jig would have been up. I opened my locker and stashed it in there. What was Officer Meekins doing during that time? What else? He was sleeping like a baby. So what you're saying is, on that day, there wasn't any murder in the evidence room at 5:15. I had a feeling we'd wind up here sooner or later. Everyone involved here is related in some way to that case. I better take another look at the files. That's that one. But the blood found on the scene certainly indicates a crime took place. What? Are you blind? The victim shown on that tape is me, and I'm not dead yet, partner. So you stole the evidence from the locker? Actually, no I didn't. Why not? When I opened the locker, the evidence was already gone. What? Mr. Redgworth, where is that evidence? It's still missing, Your Honor. Detective Goodman's locker was already empty. Someone else stole the evidence. Who though? Officer Marshall, may I ask you one thing? Fire away, partner. It's a free country. Just remember, I'm also free to decide whether or not to answer. Why did you do this? Stealing a detective's ID, injuring a police officer. This is no small offence. Moreover, you're an officer yourself. This will have serious consequences. It can't just be forgiven with a simple cut in salary. Not that salary cuts are ever a valid solution. Like I said, this isn't your case, this is one of mine. And I'll do anything it takes to get an answer I'm satisfied with. The witness has an unusual amount of zeal. Let's hear more. I can't just forget the SL9 incident. You know why? But that case was solved over 2 years ago, wasn't it? That's the reason the evidence was stored in the evidence room. Joe Dark was convicted for his crimes. One thing I can say for sure is he deserved his sentence. I remember the Joe Dark case. It involved serial murders, didn't it? I don't intend to complain about how it turned out, but there's something that still bothers me. Something went down that trial. Something no one will talk about. What happened? I don't know. That's why I'm trying to find out. Why is he so concerned with that incident? Maybe I should present him with what I think his real reason is. I had a feeling we'd wind up here sooner or later. Everyone involved here is related in some way to that case. I'll better take another look at the files. Right, let's present the files. On that one, present R1 SL9 incident files. Officer Marshall, I think I understand. I think I know why you care so much about the SL9 incident. Sounds like you've been sipping too much cactus juice, partner. I have the SL9 incident file here. The name Marshall is mentioned in here. In a list of murder victims. Neil Marshall. Are you related to this man? Neil Marshall? Yeah, I'm sure you heard the name. 2 years ago, he'd received the same lousy prosecutor award you got. What? A prosecutor? He must be talking about the King of Prosecutors trophy. Now I remember, Prosecutor Neil Marshall. He handled the SL9 case before I did. That's right. He was killed. And the case fell into your hands. But what's his relation to you? He was my brother. He was investigating murders with Damon Gant, the then Deputy Chief of Police. The group of detectives I was part of worked under them. We were desperate to prosecute the killer. Joe Dark. My brother fought Dark and was killed. That was the first time Dark left behind any evidence. That was all we needed. He was arraigned and incarcerated. The case was finally closed. At least, according to the public records. What do you mean? My brother couldn't have been killed by Joe Dark. I knew my brother better than anyone. No one could have beaten him in a fight. And that's it? That's your reason for your insane actions? There is more to my brother's death than what the records say. No matter how much you try to hide it, you can't fool me. Well, at least one thing's for certain. Now we know what happened at the police department on the day of the crime. That was the last day the SL9 case could be reopened. Not satisfied with its resolution, Officer Marshall planned to steal the evidence. Disguising himself as Detective Goodman, he entered the evidence room. Officer Meekins confronted him, so he rendered him unconscious and fled. Yes, this mystery has finally been cleared up. No murder took place at the police department that day. The things that happen by chance never cease to amaze. At exactly the same time as the murder at the prosecutor's office, this fake murder was going on at the police department. Chance? It's got to be more than just that. So if no one was murdered at the police department on the day of the crime, that means the murder in the prosecutor's office parking lot was the real one. Which in turn means only one person could have committed the crime. Chief Prosecutor Lana Skye. But wait, a verdict wasn't reached in yesterday's trial. which is why we examined the incident at the police department today. But there's only one reason the defendant was not convicted yesterday. There yet remained the mystery of the simultaneous murder at the police department. It seems to me these boys got the draw on you, partner. All of the mysteries at the police department have now been resolved. No doubt about it. Our sole murder took place at the prosecutor's office. The only suspect is Lorna Skye. And the testimony of one Miss Angel Starr is completely incontestable. If you have a response, make it a single word or less. Ah! I rest my case. It seems this trial has reached its conclusion. There's no room for doubt. Well done, Mr. Wright. Thanks to you, I didn't need to waste my time disproving the alleged murder at the police department. There's no doubt what I proved today is true. The apparent murder on the security camera's tape really was fake. But I didn't realise that would end up proving Lorna guilty. Now then, the time for the verdict has arrived. This court finds the defendant. Hold it! Your Honor, wait! Emma? The defense has an objection. A scientific objection. Right? What do you mean, right? Mr. Wright? Are you this girl's guardian? Your Honor, in this case... Please, Your Honor. All I'm asking is for a minute of your time. Please hear me out. Mr. Edgeworth, please. I don't want to leave any loose ends. You want a minute? I'll give you 3. I was kind of in shock. I mean, finding out the SL9 incident referred to the Joe Dart killings. Now that she mentions it, the names of both Skye sisters were in that file too. But that's when I figured it out. I mean, what Officer Marshall was trying to do that day. So I knew his fingerprint had nothing to do with the crime. That left only one thing. The other handprint. You mean the traces of blood found in the Detective Gumshoe's locker? But no fingerprints were found on it, right? No. But I figured if I examined it scientifically, I'd be sure to find a clue. So I ran over there and looked at it again. So did you find something? No. Huh? Sorry. I guess I'm not much of a scientific investigator after all. Is that all? Please don't be mad. I'm just a high school student. And I'm just an attorney. But Mr. Wright, those traces of blood are the only clue we have. If you can't find something wrong with them, please, Mr. Wright, you're a professional. If anyone can save Lorna, it's you. Me? Oh boy. Time's up. Now then, Mr. Wright. With regard to the incident at the police department, does any reasonable doubt remain? It appears the defense is troubled by the other bloody mark. Looking at the floor plans, a handprint was discovered around here. Is there a problem with this? Mr. Wright, I'm sorry I can't be of more use. But still, if you can't find anything wrong with that blood mark, Lorna will be... Please answer my question, Mr. Wright. We don't have all day. Yes, Your Honor. If ever I need to concentrate, it's now. I've just fucking remembered something. What could be wrong with that handprint on Detective Gumshoe's locker? Could there be something I'm missing? There is. I object. I will tell you in a second. This handprint left at the crime scene clearly shows a contradiction. The only thing that seems clear is your grasping, Mr. Wright. You've been staring pretty intently at those floor plans. Tell me, is there a problem with them? Yes, there is. Yes, this is strange. Something missing from the floor plans. Take a good look at these floor plans. Something is missing. Missing? You mean something hasn't been drawn on there? The blue badger. Yes. Something that, when drawn, will completely change the meaning of the blood mark. Let us pray the defense isn't simply trying to buy time. Very well, Mr. Wright. With all this evidence here, there's got to be something I can use. The question is, which item can prove something is missing in the floor plans? It was the blue badger. Because he was positioned right in front of... the friggin' locker. Goodman's locker. Goodman's, Gumshoe's. What about that piece of plywood? The blue badger, mascot of the police force. Defender of truth, guardian of proof. Explain yourself, Mr. Wright. Please look at the floor plans of the crime scene. The blue badger is not here. So watch what happens when we put him in. This is where he was dancing at the time of the crime. Well? Well, what? Edgeworth gets it. That's right. So long as the blue badger is dancing here, it will be impossible to place a handprint at this spot on the locker. What? So that means... just exactly what does that mean? It means it can't be done. What are you saying? Blood traces were undeniably found on that locker. Don't look at me. I didn't put it there. Mr. Wright, think it through scientifically. Emma, on that afternoon, Officer Meekins was the one who brought the blue badger to the evidence room, right? After he put it down, it would be impossible to leave a handprint on that locker. So that must mean this blood mark was left there before the blue badger was brought in. Just one moment, I will not allow such far-fetched balderdash in my courtroom. It may sound far-fetched, Your Honour, but it's the only possible explanation. On February 21st, in the police department's evidence room, blood was spilled not once, but twice. But how? One time was captured on this tape, taken by the security camera. Officer Meekins cut his hand, from which a trivial amount of blood fell. The problem is, the other time. Someone bled prior to the struggle shown on this tape. It had to have been. It had to have been Detective Goodman when he was really murdered. That's ridiculous. I refuse to accept your absurd claim. The murder portrayed in the security tape has been proven to be fake. However, that does not explain the blood mark found on the locker. and the copious amount of blood that was cleaned up off the floor. So then, assuming this murder you purport really happened, when did it take place? I demand you show evidence that proves when it occurred. When did the first incident occur? To summarise, the defence claims that prior to Officer Meekins being cut by Jake Marshall, who was posing as Detective Goodman, another incident took place in that evidence room. That's right, the blood mark on the locker proves this. Very well, then tell us. When did this first incident occur? As Mr. Edgeworth said, proof must be presented. Proof that shows when the murder took place. There's only one piece of evidence that can show that. Now then, will the defence please present its evidence? What shows when the first crime took place? It has to be the ID card record. Because that's the only thing that has entry and time, the ID card record. If the crime took place inside the evidence room, then the killer would have had to enter it. And in order to do so, an ID card would have been required. An ID card? Oh, the ID card record? The only one unaccounted for. Officer Meekins brought the blue badger panel into the evidence room at, let's see here, 4:50 PM. If the crime took place before that time, then it would be 4:40 PM. Miles Edgeworth. Just what have you done? I never would have figured you had the nerve, boy. Drop the act, witness. It doesn't take a lot of thought to figure out that it couldn't have been me. Nope, I ain't getting it. I'm afraid I don't understand either. It's clear from the luminol test that blood was there. However, when the second crime took place, both Officer Meekins and Officer Marshall failed to notice the blood. That means the blood from the first crime was wiped away by the real murderer. I would have just 10 minutes to murder the victim, carry his body away, and clean up the blood. Unfortunately, that's physically impossible. That would mean the crime must have taken place before Mr. Edgeworth entered the evidence room. Let's look at the chart again. There's only one other card number remaining. 7777777. Talk about a lucky number. But wait, that doesn't make sense. How could Detective Goodman have entered the evidence room? Since there's no record of his card being used beforehand, he must have entered along with the real murderer. That's the only plausible explanation. He went in with quad 7. Multiple 7. Mr. Edgeworth, please look into this ASAP. Find out whose ID number is 777777777. That's 17 too many, Your Honor. Unfortunately, I'm unable to look up the owner of that ID card. At least, at present. What? Explain yourself, sir. The ID number 7777777 7777777 belongs to someone with a rank of captain or higher. Someone who is so-called executive officer. We don't have the authority to inquire into such a person's identity. But that's ridiculous. Just how... I'm not finished talking, Mr. Wright. There is one situation in which we can be granted such authority. If an official charge filed against an executive is accepted. An official charge? You're all alike, aren't you? with your cover-ups and your forgeries. That's how the prosecutor's office operates. I take pride in my work, Officer Marshall. I would appreciate it if you would keep your slander to yourself. Slander, is it? Okay, let me ask a question. Yes? No, not to you, to her. The defendant's sitting over there. Your own little executive. Lana? Don't be stupid. She's been charged with murder. Of course we've looked up her ID number. And it's not 777-7777. Don't play me for a fool, partner. That's not what I meant to ask. All I want to know is one thing about that incident. Yes, on that incident? Answer me this, Chief Prosecutor. In that trial 2 years ago, did you really only use legitimate evidence? Do you need the witness to repeat his question, Chief Prosecutor? I heard him fine, Mr. Edgeworth. 2 years ago, I was in charge of the prosecution for that trial. At the time, occasionally, we felt the powerlessness of the law. At least, I did. Lana, I became a prosecutor in order to suppress crime with the law. But before I realized it, we were the ones being suppressed by the law. Defendant, just what are you saying? I'll ask you again, Chief Prosecutor. During that trial 2 years ago, did you really present all the evidence in court? Can you look at me, an investigator in that crime, in the eye and say that you did? Chief Prosecutor, you didn't. I don't have to, Officer Marshall. Why won't you answer him? Drastic crimes require drastic measures. That's just the way it is. We did what we had to, in order for him to get the verdict he deserved. But Lana, even if it involved forging evidence. See? That's what I'm talking about. No. No. Order! 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 Lana's remarks caused such a stir that the chaos in the courtroom could not be quelled. The conclusion of the trial would have to wait until the following day. Well, guys, on that fucking bombshell, we're going to leave that here for today. Oh boy. So we found out that, obviously you've just watched it, you'll know this already. So we found out that there was a crime before the fake crime. There was a real crime in there. I don't know, I'm trying to put it into words. Anyway, you need to process that. Right. If you understand any of what I've just said, more power to you. Because I've listened to it back and I can't even piece it together.
Brilliance is the best brilliance is brilliance born not from someone ignorant.
Anyway, hope you've enjoyed the video. Thank you all for watching. If you have liked it, please hit that like button, share, subscribe, comment and all that jazz. And as always, just see you all on the flip side. Bye bye.